This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's Cass, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one.
History of humans and how far back that goes, and how before language and before anything could be written, before anybody knew an alphabet or anything like that, it was the power of story. And I think that's where we get a lot of those ancient things from, is just people passing down stories and the legends and the good guys and bad guys of ancient lore. That was all passed down from our elders through story.
We are genetically engineered to process stories because that's lessons learned.
I was just going to say that, man.
Like, hey, this is how you do this. It was told through a story of some kind, or here's the life lesson of my 80 years of existence. It was told in a story and it was passed down before, written, things were written down. But even, the original things that were written down, they were all stories. So
that's how we pass wisdom.
100% agree. Yep, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to another edition of the Be One Change One podcast. We're really excited today to have Mike Burke on with us. Mike is the Chief of Staff at Northern Rock. He's brought over 24 years of leadership experience to that company. He served in the Army from 1998 and retired in 2023, so not too long ago, man, as a Brigade Command Sergeant Major, which is a pretty phenomenal achievement of its own. After spending 17 years in special operations. During his military career, Mike deployed on 14 missions to Iraq, Afghanistan, and some undisclosed locations. Aside from his military service, Mike has also worked in the government contractor space and hosts podcasts focused on leadership principles and organizational culture. He holds a Master's of Organizational Leadership. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Hey, it's an absolute honor to be on, gentlemen, and I've already enjoyed the discussion that we had before we hit the record button. So, I'm a fan of what you guys are doing here, and I love military podcasters because we're really tapping into a unique perspective, and we're sharing it with broader audience. So, first and foremost, just appreciate the work you're doing here, especially as pilots, because pilots is something that'll always be near and dear to my heart. You guys have saved my ass more than I can count. So you guys sitting down and talking about resiliency, talking about, what we need to do as a culture, especially for men, is something that's needed. And we need as many different people sharing their perspective as possible so that we can right some of the weird things that we see going on in our society today.
Yeah, no doubt, brother.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate when we have somebody, almost nearly every guest that we've had, probably every guest that we've had, when we read their bios, I always sit here and I kind of slump down in my seat a little bit when I realize that I haven't done shit with my life, because you guys are freaking out there crushing it, man. And all I did was join the Air Force and kind of follow the wave as it went out to sea. And then, and I listened to, he's got a master's degree and he's leading this and he's got these other projects going on and the dude's making movies. And I'm like, fuck, man. I mean, I like to play video games. I mean, that's pretty cool.
This is all a secondary effect, because when I went and I tried to talk to them about being a fighter pilot, they're like, "What? You see your grades?"
They told me the same thing, dude.
Get the F out of here, Joker. They were like, "Absolutely not. In fact, you ever use the word fighter pilot again, we're going to come and arrest you because you're So I joined the infantry.
Well, in all seriousness, though, Mike, I will tell you that as a fighter pilot or former fighter pilot, when you get a call and there's a tick, the hair on the back of your neck goes up a little bit. The intensity increases a little bit. The stress and the adrenaline go up a little bit. But, man, there was nothing I enjoyed doing more than showing up on scene, trying to dope out what the fuck was going on the ground, and then helping you guys out. So,
yeah, well, from our perspective, there was nothing more beautiful than a fire pilot coming overhead, just hearing that sound and going, "That's freedom right there."
Yeah,
that's freedom. Let's get this done.
I kind of stalked you on the internet a little bit, and I looked up. I saw that you've been on the Outkick podcast with David Hookstead.
Yes.
Yeah. So Cass and I both went on that one as well, and I remember David and I got into this conversation about what happens when you show up like that and all hell's breaking loose. There's gunfire in the background of the radio, and the JTAC's screaming on it, and we need it, and what's going on in the cockpit right then. And I can tell you that it's tense, but one of our jobs is to bring the temperature down a little bit, just calm and cool.
Yep.
Like we always talked about, there was always the 3 C's of communication, and that was clear, concise, and correct. Well, then we added 2 more, and it was just calm and cool, man. God, what was the other Marine guy's name? You just said his name, and I'm blanking on it right now. Jernigan was saying, he said, "Yeah, man," he said, "I loved it because you always sounded like a Midwest DJ. Hey, here we are, guys. We're just going to take control of the situation and make it happen." And that was, that was something that I took a lot of pride in, was just, hey, everybody, let's just take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let's get this right, because once I hit this little red button in the cockpit, I can't do anything about it, man.
Yeah.
It's on.
And it's funny how that, like, especially, what I witnessed in the GWAT, you talk about the early days of the FOs and some of the Army JTACs, and a lot of the screaming and the yelling and everything else. But the JTACs, the Air Force ones or the Army ones that really were worth their weight in gold replicated that behavior.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, Brandon Temple, one of my favorite all-time Air Force JTACs out there. I remember, we were just in this crazy, insane gunfight, RPGs, PKMs, tanks involved. I mean, it was just chaos unfolding everywhere, right? Brandon, he was like right behind me too. He's with the ground force commander, and he's just like, yep, here's what we need, and he's just kind of talking through it, just calm, cool, collected. And I'm like, man, everybody else is like losing their shit.
Well,
here you are.
The lesson learned that we can take from that scenario, at least on our side of the house, is sometimes slower is faster. Because we would intentionally show up and try to slow things down, because we had to know where everything was on the ground, so that we could make sure that 100%. We had our attack angle set, so that the bomb chunked a fin once we released it and was going to fall short. It wasn't going to fall short right in the middle of the blue. Like, there were so many things that we had to consider from a geometry perspective, even for the attack runs. In case you had some kind of a weapons failure, right? But the JTACs, they're taught that, man, because cadence is so important. The cadence that the guy talks to you at.
It's a dance. It really is a dance.
It is. And if he's going 100 miles a minute,
it's
hard to keep up. Especially when there's gunfire going off in the background and there's all this noise that's in the background, and it's hard to hear him. If he's just running through things, man, it's going to take us longer, right? But if he can just keep that steady cadence, man, we can click it like that. It's so nice.
Can you repeat lines 4 and 6? Dude, I'm getting shot at down here. We'll speak slower, man. Enunciate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mike, how many times do you think over your career, you said 16 years in Special Forces, how many times do you think you went through a CQB firehouse?
Oh, Jesus.
That's about how many bombs we dropped simulated in training to go down there and do that stuff. So the point is repetition, you get better at it. And it's like we talk about these elder quarterbacks in the NFL and how they talk about the game slowing down for them. They're seeing the field a little bit better. It's kind of the same thing. You go through so many reps at this that you've seen this movie before. You know how it's going to end. Let's just get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. Check all the containers, make sure that everything's on the up and up, and hit the button.
Get some initials, hit a button.
Get some initials and hit a button. Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike. So give us the 30,000 on you, brother. And then I know there was a couple of things that you wanted to mention to start the podcast off as well. So go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I mean, just like you said, I did a total of 24 years, in the United States Army. As soon as going through all the, one station training and everything else, I immediately got assigned to 2nd Ranger Battalion. And that's, I joined in 1998. So I was in about 3.5 years before September 11th happened, and then obviously just like everybody else in the world, but also especially in the military, everything kind of changed, and I will, one point I want to highlight there is I was not a fan of the Army. I was not a big fan of Ranger Regiment at the time. I was the guy that had the ticker on the wall, like, hey, here's how many days I get out, and the name of the podcast, be one, change one. The individual that really changed everything for me in the early 2000 timeframe was a guy named Josh Wheeler, Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler. He came in, he was one of my new leaders. He was my squad leader. And, within 6 months, me just kind of being this disgruntled, not a fan of the Army Ranger Regiment kind of guy. 6 months later, I'm re-enlisting. I'm now a young sergeant, and I can't imagine doing anything else with my life, and he was that individual that just changed everything in my life, and, and then obviously September 11th happened and it was off to the races. I was, the third cohort of Ranger Regiment that went into Afghanistan. I was there for the invasion of Iraq. And then, after that, for quite a few years, all the way up until 2014, 2012, all I did was Iraq deployments, just nonstop. There was a winter surge in there somewhere, but it was just Iraq nonstop. And, some of the most kinetic times, in all the deployments, especially in Iraq, I was definitely on the ground floor, and learned a lot, rose through the ranks, eventually became a platoon sergeant, kind of reached a point where, I went on every single deployment that 275 had been on up until 2009 timeframe, and a bunch of different things kind of happened, and I was like, I need to kind of take a break here. I need to take a pause. I need to kind of reset some things family wise, personally, and everything else, and went and taught ROTC for a couple years up at the University of Washington, Seattle. That was a great assignment. Really, really ironed out my fundamentals of leadership, because leadership in combat, while very important, you have to kind of gauge things, and you got to be able to freak hop as a senior leader in the United States Army. And I was a great combat leader. I was a terrible garrison leader. And ROTC kind of reset that matrix, and I learned a lot of different things, and then came back to 275, did some time in staff, did a couple more deployments, and then took over Charlie Company 275 as a first sergeant. Did that. Great deployments, had a great time with that organization, and then left in 2016. Didn't know at the time, but it was my last time serving in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and went down to the Sergeant Major Academy down in Fort Bliss, Texas, which a lot of people shit talk, but I had a great time. We loved it. Great food, a great outdoor scene, especially during the hot, months that aren't hotter. And then got the fortunate to be a CSL select, so that's command selected list, and got to go over to 2nd Cavalry Regiment over in Germany, where I served as a squadron CSM on the fringes of Europe, all the Baltic states and everything else, deterrence and assurance, as far as Russia's concerned, and then assuring the allies. It was absolutely amazing. Really, really enjoyed that, not only from an assignment aspect, but then also living in Europe, and had the unfortunate of not being selected to come back and be a sergeant major within the 75th Ranger Regiment. But then at the same time, I was selected to be the regimental sergeant major, the 33rd Regimental Sergeant Major of 2nd Cavalry Regiment, which is probably will go down as one of my favorite assignments on this earth. Had a phenomenal time, had great team, great organization, and a very, very relevant mission, as well as the largest brigade that has a mobilizability with the strikers over there, and just had a really phenomenal time. Finished up that assignment, and then came to Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, Georgia, where I did my last assignment as a brigade sergeant major for Security Force Assistance Brigade. Did 2 years of that, and then made a decision, hey, it's time. I love it, but it's time to do some other things in the world. I'm still a relatively young man, so let's get after it. And had the fortune, just like you highlighted, Cass, got the fortune to link up with an individual that was building an amazing team, an amazing organization, and he asked me to come on and kind of help him with that project as far as the systems and process and building out the organization, and using a lot of my expertise as far as that goes. And we're a private equity acquisition company that does automotive shops. We're all across the Southeast, all the way out to Texas. We have a total of 81 shops right now. And we're just growing fast and building an amazing team, and it's super, super exciting. And somewhere in there, I also got involved in podcasting. So I think I'm going on like year 5 of podcasting, but the primary one's Legends of the 75th, and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk about that. But yeah, that's the 30,000 foot view. And just the other thing I really want to cover today too, just because today's a significant day for a lot of the Ranger community, special operation community as a whole. 22nd of October, I don't know when this will be released, but in 2011, we lost Christopher Domey, who is a JTAC assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion. We also lost PFC Chris Horn on this day, and then finally Ashley White, who was a CST element attached to Charlie Company 275, all in 2011. And then in 2015, we lost, and I mentioned him earlier, he's assigned to the SMU unit out in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Josh Wheeler in Iraq during a hostage rescue mission, the same mission that actually Thomas Paine got assigned the Medal of Honor, awarded the Medal of Honor. So, so today's a significant day, and I just want to, highlight that because, those individuals are unfortunately not with us, and the world's lesser for it. But every day we got to live for them, and we got to press forward because of it.
Yeah, right on, man. Nickel on the grass for all of them. That's an old fighter pilot thing.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, right on, brother. Well, that's an amazing career, man. So, I guess the first place that I'll start with is you've been in so many different leadership positions, and we talk a lot about, skills for younger men or, guys to build. Can you talk about just in your experience, brother, from a leadership perspective, like what were the things that always caught your eye? What were the things that you saw that set certain people apart as they came up?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, there's a couple different elements. One is when no one was in charge or taking charge, that individual that took charge and was willing to throw themselves in the fray and make a decision, even if they weren't totally informed or didn't really have experience, but they were willing to make a decision.
Yeah.
And then even if it was a wrong decision, at least a decision was made. And the reason for that is because what it showed is a potential to learn. It showed a potential to take charge of a situation, and it could be anything simple. I mean, it could be 5 privates out there that are in charge of a detail to set up a tent, and one of them steps up and says, because they're all just trying to do something, and one of them says, "Listen, let's be organized about this. You do this. You hold this. All right, hey, you read off the instructions, and somebody takes charge of the situation." That's one of the things that, I always kind of look for is those individuals that were willing to kind of take charge of a situation and be that leader in absence of leadership, because it just demonstrated a lot of potential. But then also, fast forward from that, just a little bit too, is good leadership is just about, knowing you're going to make mistakes, but you're willing to learn and you're willing to listen and you're willing to go, hey, this individual, although they might not actually have the experience that I'm looking for, they do have whatever experience it is, just maybe it's time on this earth. So there's probably something I can learn from them, because if I can learn something from them, then I can put that in my toolkit, because your goal as a leader is every single day, in the military, it's super easy because, you just have kind of, you got formations, you got all this different stuff, but every day you step in front of that formation, whatever it is, you're trying to be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. And if you make a mistake, then you learn from it, you analyze it, you go, what did I do wrong? How did I do wrong? Who can I leverage to help me understand that? But tomorrow I'm gonna learn from it, and I'm gonna be a better version of myself. So and those kind of things are, what I would look for, but then also I would apply myself as a leader. And then, just one kind of last thing on that is you're not always going to have the best leadership. It's inevitably going to happen, but that doesn't mean you don't have something you can learn from them.
That's right.
I talked when I was talking about my 30,000 foot view. The reason I didn't like the Army is because I had terrible leaders. And what actually happened, it was a huge benefit to me, because when I was finally put into a leadership position, all I did was pulled out my notebook and said, okay, here's the things not to do. So as long as I don't do those, then I'm probably going to be a pretty goddamn good leader. And I just tried not to do
fucking
those.
place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, just some of those things, but, and we've already talked about this, that, whether we're talking about being a fighter pilot, we're talking about, Roscoe, you talked about, shooting CQB, just understanding you have to start somewhere. You're not going to be that, whatever you envision, you're not going to be, sorry, you guys are probably going to curse me. You're not going to be Maverick from Tom Cruise tomorrow.
Who would want to be?
I know, it's sacrilege, but it's like Nicolas Cage for us,
Yeah, right.
But anyway, the point being is like, you got to start somewhere. Everybody started somewhere. Everybody started with a basic fundamental, and you just got to be able to put in the work. And leadership's no different. That's why I really, really love talking about leadership, because it's a journey. It's a system that you refine, and you got to get the sets of the repetitions, just like anything else. And there's really not any way to circumvent it. You got to go through the process. You've got to carry your licks, and you're going to have successes, and you're going to have good days, and you're going to have bad days. I mean, I'm sure there's some days where you got behind, the stick, and you were just in it. And then there were some days you're just like, God dang it. Like, I just can't get in my groove, and I have the same day, even, after, 40 years, 35 years of shooting guns, there's some days I just go out and I'm like, God, like, I'm just not in it today. Like, all right, I'm just going to pack up, and today's not my day, and that's going to happen.
I think you're always going to have one of those days where you just want to go get back in bed, put your head back on the pillow, let the alarm go off a second time. You know what? We're just going to start over, because I was just recently, I was driving to work, and it was one of those mornings where just, 4 or 5 things just hadn't gone my way. My coffee overflowed, or my pants weren't dry, or whatever it was. And I'm driving into work, and some lady cut me off, and I said, I like hit the brakes. I slowed way down to like 30 miles an hour. And I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this today. I need a reset. So I took a different way to work. Like right then, I picked, okay, I'm going to take a different road. I'm not going to go my normal routing to work. I have a couple of options, so I'm going to take a different route. And I don't know, man, maybe it was just different scenery, or different traffic, or whatever, but it kind of helped me recage. It was almost the equivalent of, I'm just going to go back to bed. I'm going to start over with this. Yeah. But, one thing that you hit on in there, man, is you hit on a lot of really good stuff, but for the younger listeners on our podcast, on your podcast, there's a big takeaway in there. And it was when you said that you got to start somewhere. Right. And I think that we can probably all collectively agree, looking back, and when we see this younger generation coming through, they're kind of sold this bill of goods of, you can be whatever it is you want to be, and you can be it tomorrow, because social media sells you this messaging that things are instant and things are automatic and you're entitled to all this shit. Well, I'm sorry, man, but real life says otherwise. And unfortunately, you just have to do the work, man. You have to pay your dues. You have to do the work. You have to start at the bottom in most cases. Whether it's going to college, like, you don't go to college and clep out of your degree, right? You have to start as a freshman and go to the sophomore and work your way up. And then when you go to your first entry level job, you're sorting mail, and then you're doing other tasks. And so our military experiences were no different. Like you, I was on the enlisted side. I started as an airman basic, and it sucked. My first paycheck was $100. I was poor. I was cleaning shitters for a living. They wouldn't even let me work on airplanes. They made me clean bathrooms, so, and then you fast forward 20 years and you look back on it and you're like, okay, I can follow the bouncing ball through this, where doors opened, opportunities came up. I was prepared. I walked through those doors, et cetera. But by and large, it just came to pay your dues, give the effort, and give it time.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother.
No, please.
I was just going to piggyback. I mean, one of the things that I really appreciated that you said too was, you're going to have bad leadership sometimes, man, but you can still learn, right? You can learn all those things that you don't want to be when you get to that position, all the things that you don't want to do when you get to that position, somebody that's very ego driven, let's say, and it's all about them making the next rank or them making the next promotion, to put it in a civilian term. They can wreak havoc through an organization. And sometimes I found often I was the kind of shit filter for that stuff rolling downhill, trying to keep all the boys together and focused on the task at hand. And that was getting to be better fighter pilots and getting to be more tactical.
Yeah.
But like just what Roscoe said too, right? It's at some point you got to step outside of your comfort zone. You know, you just got to start. You got to take that risk on yourself. You got to have enough gumption and grit to just go, fuck it. I'm going to try this and see where it goes. And you may fail miserably, and that's okay, right? One of the things that we talk about on the podcast all the time is failure is one of our greatest teachers. That's another bill of goods. I think people are so afraid to fail that it prevents them from actually stepping out into opportunity sometimes, you know, or into seizing a chance at something to see if that path may work out for them. And so, but it does. It like all these things take time, man. It takes repetitions. You have to build skills. There's all this stuff that goes into it. So go ahead.
No, I really appreciate you highlighting that, Cass, and you know, Roscoe, you guys brought up some great points, you know, and you know, with the leadership thing, you know, it really does work both ways. You know, you got to have a little bit of patience with yourself, and you got to have patience with others, especially when you're in a leadership position. Or if you have a poor leader, you know, you got to realize every storm passes. Like, it's not going to be there forever. It's not always going to exist like that. It's eventually going to pass. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you're tolerant or you're complacent or you're lazy. Like, just like you said, Cass, like, you need to be finding things that the potential for failure is high. If you're not, then you're just operating within your comfort zone. Like, you need to have dreams, you need to have missions, you need to be trying to do things that, quite frankly, they should scare the shit out of you. You know, because then, you know, if you're like, you know, I was talking before this, you know, I was talking about how I'm really super nervous for something, you know, upcoming. And the reason for that is because it's just something that I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm, you know, and my point is that, but that's exciting.
Yeah.
And you've got to constantly be pushing that paradigm. If you want, you know, Roscoe, you talked about social media. Social media is everything that's great, everything that's perfect. It's the end result of everybody. You know, you look at a fitness athlete on there. Yeah, sure, people show transition pictures, but for the most part, they're showing the end result, like a perfect physique, or they made the millions of dollars, you know, doing whatever. You know, there's few that you're actually cataloging the journey, the highs and the lows, and the failures and everything else. Most of the stuff that makes the high. Yeah. Most of the stuff that makes the highlight reels is all the successes. But, you know, the other thing about that is just watch them for a period of time. And eventually you're going to see the fall off the cliff. Like it happens for everybody, you know, and you see that stuff, you know, with influencers and celebrities, and you see all the crazy stuff that's going on. And it's because people just get complacent, you know, and they're not pushing. And they're not challenging themselves, and they're not looking for that next mountaintop. They have a rival, you know, they've arrived mentality. Then it becomes an expectation reality where they expect things because of their arrival, and you just never ever want to be in that place. Like, I still think to this day, to a fault, I'm the stupid kid from Montana, okay, that barely passed high school, like, and you know, was not popular, was not confident, and all this stuff. Like, I still look at myself that way. I've done all this stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be done. I'm going to keep on pushing for that next thing, because that's just what I want to do, you know, and I want to keep
that's
on.
a common thread though, man. That's a common thread.
Yeah.
And so many of the things that you were just talking about are common threads when you talk about success. Success, we can probably all agree that it's user defined, right? My version of success is going to be different than yours, but the ingredients to achieve it are all going to be generally about the same. You've already touched on things like humility. Humility is a superpower. And for you to be sitting there in a leadership position and admit that you don't have all the answers, dude, that's humility. That's what that is. That's inviting other people to coach you up and maybe illuminate a different path for you or whatever. And you talked about doing hard shit, right? And as you were talking about that, it reminded me of this book I read not too long ago, and I can't remember the name of the book, but I remember this concept. It's called misogi, and it's a Japanese concept talking about purging and cleansing. And these two guys, they took that and they said, you know what, to purge our mind, body, and soul, we're going to use this Masoji principle, and we're going to bite off something that their rule was you have to have a greater than 50% chance of failure at this. And so, for example, one of the things they did, they get together and they do this once a year. And one of the things they did was they were out in the Pacific Ocean in about 10 feet deep of water, and they had a boat behind them with some medical personnel to make sure they were safe. But they had like a 50-pound rock that was on the bottom of the ocean, and they wanted to move it a mile in 10 feet of water. So they would go down, they would pick it up, they'd take a few steps, and they'd set it down. And it took them like 12 hours, but they did it, you know. And he said there was a point in there where I thought I was going to drown. They've walked across glaciers and, I mean, just any matter of shit. But the whole point is they were really challenging themselves. And if they failed, they kind of went back and they go, okay, well, that was a limit. That was a barrier. Let's identify why we failed. Let's highlight those root causes. Let's try to get better for it so that the next iteration we can apply them and be better at it.
Yeah. And I think for, the average person that, might be listening, and I don't mean average in a negative way, but, maybe you're just starting your journey, your adult journey. Like, don't think you got to go out into the Pacific Ocean and do something like this. It can be simple.
That's valid. Start simple. That's valid.
Well, no. I mean, you think about all of us. Like, I think, it's something I talk to my kids about. Okay. Like, my daughter or one of my sons, they'll have trepidation or they'll have fear or anxiety about something that they're going to do. Maybe it's a tryout, maybe it's their first day at work, first day of high school, asking a girl out, asking a boy out, whatever it might be. And what I talk to them about is I'm like, you're going to look back at this and you're going to realize it wasn't a big deal. You know how many times in my life I've been so freaking intimidated and so scared of something I'm about to do. And then when I got on the back end of it, I'm like, wow, that was really not a big deal. And now it creates a new normal. When you make it through basic training, now you got a new normal. You're like, that was nothing. Okay, there was parts of it
that comfort
sucked,
limit that we talk about a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just, your goal is to create new normals. And it's going to start small. It's going to start small. Maybe it's just waking up before lunch. I had one son that was a major accomplishment. Like, just wake up before
goals.
Lunch. Yeah. And now he's in tech school in the Air Force, by the way. He's
awesome.
in tech school in the Air Force.
Smart
and
kid.
Like he is 100%. Yeah, he's crushing it too. And literally his mom went out and saw him this weekend and stuff. And she's like, I was blown away. Like, he was up
Different
at
kid.
6.
Yeah.
He'd not been knocking out PT. Like, he did all this stuff. He called me at 8 and said, Mom, we're ready to get together. I've already picked out where we're going to breakfast. Like, we're going to go do. And she's like, it's like noon. And she's like, normally you're like waking up at this time and you've already like accomplished like a half a day, He's like, yeah, I already studied, like all my homework's done for the next day. Like, but it's a new normal,
Well, that's how those dudes like Jocko, and he takes a picture of his watch every day and puts it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But the whole point is he's like, dude, I'm getting my day started early because I can get 2 days worth of work done before you guys are even going on your lunch break. I'll get up and have my PT and my breakfast and work for 4 hours and then take a break, work for another 4 hours. And I've already done more since I've been awake than you might do all day. And that's his whole point of it. Yeah, living a life of discipline and blah, blah, blah. But if you really want to pack in as much as you can, get up earlier in the morning. That's
good.
Well,
who would have thought who would have thought a $12.99 Casio watch would have become such a brand?
Right. Seriously. Well, I like what you said too, though, Mike, because you do have to start small. 96.9% of the people in this world, if you think that you're just going to finish college and be middle management or, in college and be a CEO, that task is so overwhelming. You haven't built the skills, you haven't built the knowledge base, you haven't built the experience to be able to manage what you think you can do, right? And so you have to start small, man. That's how think of all the training programs that we went through in the military for whatever phase you were in. It's all building blocks. It's blocking and tackling to start, man. It's the basics, right? Figure this out. Figure out how to do X, Y, and Z first, and then it builds from there. And that's how life works. That's how this shit goes down.
I wonder if it'd be an interesting experiment. And from a sergeant major's point of view, you you could probably relate to this a lot, but let's say that you are the CEO or the sergeant major or whatever, and you got these kids coming up in this new generation. Go make that private or PFC. Go make him sergeant major for 2 weeks. Say, hey man, you're going to be the sergeant major for 2 weeks. You want to be in charge? Here you go. Boom, boom. And just watch him fall on his face. And then maybe that'll give him some perspective. I don't know.
So I didn't quite do it like that, but I did have in a soldier board that basically, this young private, he was, he was very articulate. He wasn't rude about it, but basically he was talking about how the fact that as a regimental sergeant major, I had a driver. And he was like, why do you have a driver? Like, you don't need a driver. That's a soldier that could be doing this, all this different kind of stuff. And I understand his perspective, like 100%. And I did kind of like what you talked about, Roscoe. I said, okay, well, and I talked to his sergeant major, and his first sergeant. I said, hey, can I just get him for a week? Just for a week, and he's just going to shadow me. And, as we went on and he saw my calendar, and he saw what I was doing, he goes, you have a driver because you need the time to do shit. Like, because I was like, listen, what you need to understand is every night when I put my head on my pillow and I fall asleep as a regimental sergeant major, I know consciously that I'm ignoring 10 to 25 things that need to be done right now. And I just can't get to them. Because I just don't have enough time in the day,
Yeah.
There's 4,500 of you mongoons that I'm responsible for. I love every single one of you the exact same, but some of you need a little bit more love than other ones, And so the point kind of being, and I don't remember, how this kind of tied into what we're talking about, is it's also that perspective, and that can also tie into leadership too. You might look at one thing one way and go, why is that person doing it? And go ask, get perspective, gain perspective. It might look absolutely ridiculous to you, but what you might find out, because you just don't have the perspective, because you're in your little pocket of whatever you're doing with tasks and influence and everything else. But when you gain that perspective, you realize, oh wow, that totally makes sense. Or maybe you won't.
You just don't see the whole picture a lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, on the flip side, the flip side of that too is, so like for the times that I was fortunate enough to be in leadership positions, I always thought it was really important to put people in play. And what I mean by that is, one, you got to get feedback, right? Because you'll have knuckleheads out there that because of ego or just straight up fucking naivety, or because, in a fighter pilot community, everybody thinks that they're the hottest thing in the squadron. They don't recognize that they have some flaws when it comes to maybe officership, right? Things that don't really apply to just what we do day to day in the jet. And so you got to give that feedback, because that forces them to be responsible to fix it. But then the second thing is, you got to put people in play. If you've got somebody who maybe is a little weak in a certain area, give them a task that exploits that makes them have to work on that aspect of themselves, whether it's, organizing a TDY, or maybe they're having some organizational issues or some things like that, right? Give them that task. And is it going to be perfect and pretty? Is it going to be maybe a little more stressful than you want it to be as a leader? Yeah, that part is. And no, it's not going to be perfect or pretty, but they're going to learn so fucking much. And oh, by the way, you're going to learn so much about them at the end of that process, to know if they're the kind of cat that needs to fleet up eventually, if they're going to be ready for that next step, or if they're going to need a little more mentoring, right? So I think it's really important to always look for, in leadership positions, look for ways to put people in play. And going back to what you were saying, Mike, there were plenty of times, man, where I would give guys tasks and, I would circle back a week or two later and go, all right, dude, give me the skinny. How are you handling this? And they would list out like how their attack plan for whatever they were doing. In the back of my mind, I'm going, I wouldn't fucking do it that way. But you know what? It doesn't matter, right? There's 100 ways to skin a cat. And what makes sense to me may not make sense to them. As long as the end result is that we're successful in whatever we're trying to do, that's all that really matters. And letting them spin their wheels on things, because I mean, I would step in and give them some feedback, but if they didn't take it and they end up spinning their wheels on something, well, guess what, dude? That's how you learn. That's how they figure out, well, fuck, man, next time I should have listened to Cass, or next time, I won't do that. I'll just do X, Y, or Z to be more efficient in that process.
No, 100%. I agree.
From our perspective, or from our seats, kind of as the mentors, as the, getting to be elders in our community, or at least more experienced than some of the younger generations, though, we have to take that step, and we have to take that mantle, and know that it comes with a certain degree of patience that you're going to have, and a responsibility to teach those kids. You have to give them an opportunity. How many times am I out there working on a car with my kids and I get frustrated, and I just want to grab the wrench and do it myself? And yeah, I could get it done, and I could go back inside and finish watching my NASCAR race, but it's more important for him to learn how to do this. It's more important for him to figure out how to solve this problem, and me to just kind of be the bumper rails on the side of the alley to keep him from driving off in the ditch.
We'll make sure you don't fail, but I'm going to let you learn some lessons.
Yeah, that's right.
Man, I'm gonna let you, and I tell this story. I probably told it before on the show. I don't remember, but the first time I changed a water pump on my pickup truck, I was 15 years old. My water pump went out on my Chevy pickup truck, and my dad says, "Go up to the shop, get a water pump, take it over there, and fix it." And so me and a buddy of mine went and did it. And this is back before the internet. We didn't have a manual or anything. We just stared at the motor until we found something that looked like what we were holding in our hands. And we said, let's take that out. and we did. And we figured out how to get to it. We put it all back together, filled it full of water, cranked the engine, and water just started. It was like Old Faithful. The guys are just going everywhere, right? We forgot to put the little gaskets on there. So lesson learned. And you know what? Every water pump that I've changed since then, I've remembered to put the damn gaskets on. So yeah. If Dad would have been there and held our hands through the whole thing, it would have gotten done faster. He probably would have done a portion of it, and we would have gotten it done correctly and everything. But maybe I wouldn't have learned that lesson, and it would have happened to me 10 years down the road. Because what do I always say, man? It's life will continue to present you the opportunity to learn a lesson until you actually learn that lesson. Thankfully for me, I learned it at 15 and didn't have to learn it at 35, and my water pump went out again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike,
go ahead. No, go
ahead, brother. If you want to add on to that.
No, I think, if you want to say it, just kind of talk about all this in a little bit different way, be a lazy as a leader sometimes. Meaning let others, carry the mail and sit back and let them do it.
Well, you have to.
And and then, but know when to step in, know when to inject.
Yeah.
But I had a platoon sergeant working for me one time, and his squad leaders would kind of complain. They're like, man, he's just kind of lazy. Like, we do everything, and I'm like, well, but does he ever let you fail? Like, when does he step in? And he's like, and they're like, well, he usually steps in like when we're really, really about to waste a bunch of time and spin a bunch of wheel. I was like, he's not being lazy. He's letting you guys learn your lessons and come up with new opportunities, come up with different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's just not going to let it, come off the rails.
Yeah.
So he's not lazy. He's actually just being a really, really good mentor and leader.
Yeah. I'm glad you said the word mentor, man, because the next question that I wanted to ask you was, we talk a lot about the value of mentorship on the podcast, and, especially if you're younger, or you don't even have to be younger. Let's say you're transitioning jobs, right? Or starting a different career, right? Like, the value of mentorship is so powerful, and seeking out mentors and all of that, those kinds of things. So you mentioned Sergeant Wheeler had a huge impact in your life. So can you talk to us about the value of mentorship, or how you see it, the importance of it, or how it may have played a role in your life and your career?
Yeah, I definitely want to, tell a Josh Wheeler story, because, I mentioned him earlier. What's funny is the day that he came over to our platoon to take over as squad leader, it was I was roommates with another team leader at the time, a guy named Casey Cassvan. The very first morning, so he comes in with day one, the next morning, so day two technically. He comes in at like 5 o'clock in the morning and starts, kicking on our door, pounding on our door, and he's got this, Oklahoma accent. He's like, "Men, it's time to get up. We got chores to do," and this is what he had said. And I remember Casey rolls over in his bed, and we got, bunk beds across the room, beds across the room. And he goes, "Yeah, this guy ain't going to work. This is some bullshit," And, so it was kind of an interesting start, but, his thing was leaders get up before everybody else. And they're assessing the day and they're strategizing for the day. And principles he used to always leave us with was, Every time you train like it's the last time you're going to go into combat. Every time you do physical fitness, do it like it's the last time you're going to go into combat. And, you know, don't be afraid to make a mistake, but just learn quickly, you know. And these are things that, you know, he really, really bestowed on us. And he really kind of, I had other mentors, but, and unbeknownst to him, unbeknownst to all of us, it just became, everything that he was talking about became super relevant because September 11th happened, you know, later that year, you know, so, or the next year. So it became like hyper aware. But the other part of that is when we talk about mentorship, you want, and it's not maybe your everyday mentor, but when you talk, you want to have multiple mentors in your life, you know, for different compartments in your life, you know, but you want to have a mentor that is not going to put up with your bullshit, that is going to tell you the things that you don't want to hear. You're a good mentor. You should want to fight sometimes. You're like, man, and then, but upon reflection, you realize how right they are. And they're because they're telling you things you just don't want to hear. They're not giving you that confirmation bias, and they're making you think of the world differently. They're making you look outside the box so that you can truly grow. I mean, some of my mentors, you know, because I do, you know, I try to have, you know, multiple mentors for different compartments of my life. And I mean, sometimes like I need to call them, but I don't want to call them.
Yeah.
Because I know what they're going to say. And it's going to make me so mad, you know, but it's important, you know. So, but you, at the same time, you also want to be careful that the mentor can mentor you in a way, or has the experience to mentor you where you're trying to go. Don't pick a mentor, you know, let's say somebody that's going to help you with raising a family, or, you know, a marriage in some capacity that's been divorced 3 times. Like, obviously you suck at relationships, so maybe you're not a good mentor, you know. Or, hey, how do I be smart with money? How do I invest my money? Well, don't pick a mentor that's not gonna that doesn't you know, have financial wealth, or is not good with money. Or, you know, hey, I need to build a business or a nonprofit. Well, pick a mentor that's going to do it. That doesn't mean that mentor can't fill a different capacity, because I've also outgrown mentors. I've had mentors that I've ellipsed in some way, you know. I mean, I have mentors that are absolutely pivotal in my journey as a non-commissioned officer, as a leader in the United States Army. But when it came to being a non-commissioned officer and a leader in the United States Army, I outgrew them, because when I became a brigade sergeant major, they'd never been a brigade sergeant major. So therefore they cannot mentor me in that capacity anymore. I need to utilize somebody else that has done that so that they can be a mentor. And don't get me wrong, they still mentor me in other capacities, and they're still very near dear friends to me, and I'll ask them different things, but I'm going to be careful at the same time, the things that I'm asking them and the feedback they're going to give me. Because if they start going into, well, hey, as a sergeant major, you need to do this, I'm not going to say I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, but I'm going to be a little bit cautious with that, because their perspective is limited. They're not bad human beings. They're phenomenal human beings, but their perspective is limited. Yeah. I actually have more experience about what I'm trying to talk to them about than they do.
Yeah, but you also need sounding boards in your life too. You know,
absolutely.
You need a guy like that maybe he's not, you know, he didn't advance as quickly or as far as you did, but he's a trusted agent. And you know that you 100%. Can call him at any time of the day and say, dude, I just need to get some shit off my chest. You know, I'm having this problem. 100%. It's a sergeant major problem, and maybe you don't have the greatest perspective on it, but just hear me out on it, you know. And, you know, that person may be that voice of reason for you. I have a very recent story. I started laughing as you were talking about the mentor that you don't want to call, because you know what he's going to say and it's going to make you mad. So a buddy of mine did this project, and he picked a few of his trusted agents to review his project and give him feedback on it. And I did. And when I emailed it back to him, it was pretty red inked, pretty heavily. And in the email, I said, all right, dude, so my advice is free. You get what you pay for, but here it is. And when you look at it, I know you're not going to talk to me for 3 weeks, but when you do come back up for air, I'm happy to have a conversation. And I know this about him because he's done it before, right? The last project he did, I reviewed it for him. He didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. And then he finally called me and goes, hey, man, I've been a pussy. So yeah, let's talk about it. So anyways, we jump on the phone the next day. He read the email. He laughed. He got a kick out of it. And he took some of the feedback and he says, yeah, I mean, some of it's good. Some of it's, I don't really care, but whatever. And he told me this story about he's got these 2 little French bulldogs, and one of them got sick and was like screaming in pain. So he took him to the vet, and the vet gave him 2 medicines. And one of them was in a chewable and one of them was in a capsule. And he said the little French bulldog will take the chewable and gobble it right up. But no matter what he does with that capsule, he will not swallow it. He put it in bread. He put it in his dog food. He tried mixing it up with some bacon. The dog just spits it right out, right? And he says, he told me he sent this project to 3 people. He said, this other guy, he's the chewable. He's going to give me feedback that's easy to digest. It's very nice and everything. He says, you're the capsule. It's very hard for me to swallow that capsule, but it's medicine that I need. And I know that about you. So you need these types of people in your life, you know, this kind of guy that you're going to call, and you know he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to call you all kinds of names, but you know it's that advice that you need at that moment.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. You got to have them. You got to have them.
Yeah. Well, one thing I like that you said in there too, brother, was because I used to say something similar to guys, because I think one thing that 9/11 taught us was you never know when the balloon's going to go up. You never know when you're going to get that last training opportunity, right? And so you have to take every fucking opportunity you get to get better seriously. And you really have to go out there, and every pound of JP8 that we would burn, you need to make you a better fighter pilot. Or, you know, every time you guys would go to the course or whatever, you got to get better on shooting or whatever it is you guys were doing. But I think that's so true in life too, right? I think one of the reasons why, at least that I've found in the guys that I've mentored, why some men are so listless these days is because they're not driving towards anything, right? They don't have there's nothing on the horizon that's pushing them. There's not that 100%. Goal, there's not that objective, you know, there's not that just that question.
They don't have a why.
Dude, I don't know if today's the last day that I'm going to get a chance to do this. So I better fucking really work hard at it. Right. And that applies to what we do in our own personal lives too, in making ourselves better. Right. So what's like, set that goal, right? Set that, whether maybe it's weight loss, dude, maybe you've got some forgiveness to do, you know, maybe you got a short temper. Like there's all these things that you can work on. There's all these skills that we can build and develop, but you've got to go out there and you've got to seize every day with the opportunity to get after it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make a statement that I'm very, very fond of, and then I'm gonna work backwards from that, kind of, you know, hitting your point, Cass, is you're not going to rise to the level of your expectations. You're going to perform at your level of conditioning and training. Okay. So, you know, working back from that, and you can, you know, sure, we can talk about combat, we can talk about military, but really at the end of the day, you know, it encompasses a lot of different things in life. If you want to accomplish something, whatever it might be, you've got to set the expectation. You've got to say, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to aim for. Because otherwise, you, just like you said, you're following through, you're falling through life. You're hoping not to hit anything on the way down. But you really, really, truly got to set it, and then align yourself with individuals that are trying to maybe accomplish the same goal or something that's similar. You know, that's why the military is what the military is. Everybody's trying to do the same shit. Everybody that's going through pilot training is trying to be a pilot. Yeah. You know, there's no one in there that's, you know, just trying to, you know, see what happens, you know, like, you know, I'm just going to kind of see what happens, you know, and
you might be surprised at that one.
Yeah.
Well, you know, but
just saying, you might be surprised.
They don't perform as well.
Yeah. The majority. Okay. Cause sure, you know, even in special operations, you know, there's people that are just kind of going through the motions. They don't really know what they're trying to. Yeah, that looks cool, but they don't really know what they're trying to do. But by and large, everybody's there. So if you're trying to say, hey, I want to lose weight, okay, because I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to walk around the block without losing my breath. I just want to be healthier so I can be there for my family, you know, because I don't want to be obese because it's terrible for my health in, you know, countless different ways. Well, guess what? Stop hanging out with people that are what you don't want to be. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to cut them out of your life, but get with people that are going to help you in that journey. If you want to get into martial arts, you want to get into jiu-jitsu, then you're going to go hang and you're going to hang out with those people. That's why all those clubs exist. But you got to set goals and, push goals, don't just make it easy. If I say that, but at the same time, I gotta realize that not everybody's, got all the confidence in the world because of where, their life is. So if you're like, well, I want to lose weight, but I suck I don't suck, but I have terrible confidence, then fine. Set very achievable goals. By next week, I'm gonna lose 1 pound. By next week, the week after that. But then as time goes on and you build that repetition, then push it out and have stretch goals that really kind of scare you and kind of intimidate you so that you can build that confidence, because now you're doing two things at once, but realize there's going to be setbacks because, and this is one thing I talk to, I don't know why I'm pulling on this thread, but I am, when I talk to, because people will reach out, family, friends, all different kinds of people, about wanting to lose weight or to get in shape. And I'm like, listen, this is truly, truly never, ever going to be successful unless you're willing to commit to changing your lifestyle. You're not going to lose weight. You're not going to become physically fit if you're not willing to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
You just saying, well, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to go on a diet, or I'm going to go to that's not going to do it, because what's going to happen is you're going to miss a day because you're just tired, you're wrecked, from work and then working out, doing something different, and you're going to miss a day. And then that day is going to become 2 days. That day is going to become 3 days.
Oh, there's that slippery slope.
Right. But if you're going, this is my lifestyle, this is who I am now. I missed a day. Oh, well, I'm going to hit it doubly hard tomorrow or whatever. And then you're back on it. Or hell, I missed a month. Oh, well, today's Tuesday. Time to get back on my lifestyle. This is who I am. And this is part of my identity. One of my greatest, people that I kind of try to help do this was actually my sister-in-law, and she really wanted to get into physical fitness. She wanted to lose some weight. She'd been battling with stuff for a very long period of time, and we told her this. My wife and I told her this, and now, dude, she's in the gym more than I am. Like, and I'm in the gym a lot. Like, but I mean, and she talks about that. She's like, I committed to living a different lifestyle. Yeah. I stopped chasing fad diets, workouts. I decided my lifestyle is going to be different, and so it could be anything,
Yeah. What you talked about there, you talked a lot about, Jim Rohn had this quote that says, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And we talk a lot about the circle of 5. What's your circle look like? And you may have a bunch of different circles. You may have a circle that you go to church with. You may have a circle that are Friday night, fire pit buddies. You might have a circle that's your gym guys, your circle at work, whatever it may be. But you got to surround yourself with the right people, man, who are like-minded, who are going to push you, who are going to ask those uncomfortable questions and hold you accountable, which is really what you're talking about. Is you need an accountability partner a lot of times.
Accountability.
There's a good switch, I think, that gets flipped in your brain somewhere along the way if you stick with it long enough, if you're serious about making that lifestyle change. And it goes from motivation and then ends up being discipline, right? And the motivation is that outside force that's getting you up off the couch, whatever it may be. You want to look good in your swimsuit for your 25-year high school reunion, right? Whatever it is. But when you make this a lifestyle thing, now it just becomes a discipline. And you hit the nail in the nugget, man. It's just who you are. And I'm living proof of this right now, because since about the middle of August, I've just kind of been going through the motions, man. I've always got an excuse for why I don't need to do the workouts that I need to be doing to train for the event that I'm training for, whatever it is. And I'm just kind of going through the motions. This past weekend, went and worked out with a friend, and I actually, Cash, you'll love this, on my mirror in there right now, I've got 2 things. I've got 2 motivational quotes for me. One of them is make good choices, and the other one is fuck Francis.
Yeah.
Because I needed that motivation, right? I needed him to go out there and outperform me on that day, because when he did, I got embarrassed. And I was like, oh shit, man, I got to get back on it, right? And since then, that was Saturday, and now it's Tuesday, and I've had 4 really good workouts. And I actually walked into the living room the other day, and I told Katie, I was like, I'm back, right? Yeah. I feel good now, right? I re-energized that part of me that said, hey man, this is who you are. This is what you do. Go do it.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
what's so good about the lifestyle piece that you brought up, Mike, is it makes it habitual. At some point, you go from motivation to it becoming a habit. It's just what you do, right?
You schedule your day around it, around these different events, whatever it is. Yeah.
And when you get out of your habit, it bothers you.
Yeah, right.
And
it
that's
does.
a good thing.
Yeah,
you know?
that is.
Yeah.
Hey,
you know,
dude,
the other part of that. Oh, good.
Nope. Finish.
No, the other part of, that you are who you surround yourself with, the 5 people that you're closest with. The other part of that too is I could tell you where you'll be in 5 years by your 5 closest associates.
The 5 people you hang out with. Yep. That's for sure.
Sorry.
And I'm glad that I saved this question until now, because we've kind of been building towards this. And Cass, I think you had stepped away for a second when Mike and I were talking in the pregame about whether you're in a fighter cockpit or whether you're in the 75th Ranger Regiment or a Navy SEAL or whatever it is, right? We're kind of at the pointy end, or as I said with Mike, we're at the round end of the spoon, right? But what I really wanted to talk about, Mike, was there's some ego that goes along with that. There's some cockiness that goes along with that. And that line between cockiness and confidence is very fine. And oftentimes we overstep one direction or the other. And I'd like to hear it from your perspective, being in the elements that you were, and how important it is to be able to utilize that for good and to be able to harness it and rein it in when you really need to.
I think, I love the confidence and the arrogance conversation. Confidence comes from a position of the experiences and the things that you've done. Arrogance is not necessarily always seated in an experience or what you've accomplished. It's just, kind of a self-imposed that I think I can do this. But, one thing that I really love about high-performing teams is that they hold each other accountable in terms of that. That if somebody's getting too arrogant, in a situation, either they'll call it out or they'll just kick your ass at something. Like you're like, you step out on the range or whatever, and you're just, you're being Joe Cool. You think you're just the baddest mofo, and somebody just steps up and just tunes you up, and you're just like, and they're like, don't talk shit, just be better.
Here's your slice of humble pie.
Right. And but that's in high performing teams. But at the end of the day, well, the thing that and I'm going to tell you right now, I when I talked about it, the 30,000 foot view, part of the reason that I had to leave Ranger Regiment, I realized I needed to leave Ranger Regiment for a little while and go, is because my level of arrogance was off the fucking charts. It was out of control. Because I was a Ranger platoon sergeant, and during those days, because of General McChrystal and his desire to have a bunch of different strike forces, just really pressuring all the terrorist cells and all the networks and everything else, the platoon sergeants controlled the show. Like, you couldn't go out on target unless you asked the platoon sergeant. And so I'm a sergeant first class with at one point 8 years, but at the end, 10 years of my time being a platoon sergeant. Like, I'm junior. And I got generals calling me to ask me to go out on missions, so my point is what happened was I was trying to put a training exercise together, and it was a very, very innovative training exercise, sorry. And, I was requesting all these different things. We were going to do all this different kind of stuff. And I remember this major on staff was like, you don't need to do that. And I just remember I lost my cool. Like, I'm like, who are you? Like, who are you, Major, to tell me I don't need to do this? Do you basically, and I didn't say it, but like, do you know who the fuck I am? Like, I'm the senior platoon sergeant in 2nd Ranger Battalion. I've done X, Y, and Z, all this different kind of stuff. And I remember, after I kind of lost my shit on him, and the mentor of mine, he came over and he's like, hey, Burke, like, basically, like, shut the hell up. Like, let's go for a walk, And because this major, obviously he wasn't going to sit there and take it, so we were going at it, in front of a bunch of people. And I just remember walking across back to my office, back to my AO. And I just remember being like, whoa, I need to take
shit.
a deep breath.
Yeah.
I need to take a deep breath here. Like, who in the hell do I think I am? And my point is that that's happened multiple times throughout my career, where I've just had to be punched in the mouth, literally, sometimes, figuratively and literally, to go, man, I'm just not who, I'm not as good as I think I am. I need to take a slice of humble pie. And what that's developed over time, and sorry, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole real quick if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
But I think that's really a beautiful evolution of leadership. When you're young, one, you're dumb. Two, you're a sponge because you're just trying to learn everything that you could possibly do. The ticket is you need to learn fast, make mistakes, and learn very, very quickly. That's what you need to do when you're young. And then kind of that middle part is you need to try to remove obstacles for the leaders that you're trying to train. Okay. And you need to try to bypass, the mistakes that they could possibly make and learn faster than you did. Okay. So that they become a better leader than you did, quicker than you did. Okay. So that's kind of that mid-tier leadership. But that senior level of leadership, okay, that last third of your life or whatever you want to look at it, your leadership journey, that's really, really and obviously that's the most relevant because that's where I'm at. That's a beautiful part. And what it is where you have the ability to reflect on things that you've done, reflect on people that you've mentored, you've watched their journeys, you've learned their lessons with them, you've seen them make the mistakes, but then you be able to articulate that and go, okay, based on that, reflecting on that, here's how I realize I don't know anything, okay, but I know more and I can help more and I can bestow more on other individuals. And I can, because I'm coming from a position that even though I've been through all of this stuff, I still suck, but I know enough to make sure that those guys don't suck. And then, and it's, that's why, like, some of the greatest leadership stuff that we read, it comes from that part of the life.
Yeah.
There's guys that are in the hunt, and don't get me wrong, that there's all beautiful things too. But that real reflective leadership, the journaling, the writing down, and really, really deeply analyzing all these leadership fundamentals, these mentor fundamentals, these life lessons, and going, okay, 18-year-old kid, exactly what you guys are doing here, okay, and exactly what you guys have these guests, this collective experience of a lot of amazing stuff is I want to put something in this 18-year-old kid's head that's going to avoid him, or it's going to help him avoid 16 mistakes in his mentality, in his leadership, and in his journey, so that by the time he's 19, he's where I was when I was 23.
Yeah.
And then, we're just progressively doing that. And the more we do that, the better we do that, and the more laser focus on it is, the better we're just impacting everybody around us, but we also got to give them, tangible stories and tangible, lessons learned so that they can immediately action it. We can't give them hyperbole, we can't give them kind of this holistic kind of overview. Like, we got to say, this is, you got a round peg and I'm going to give you a round, kind of solution for it right now. I'm not going to just kind of speak in grandiose terms. Sorry, that was
no
something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So you guys just got like
mic drop, man. That was good.
You guys got like the first iteration of me, like,
that was good, man.
it.
And I think in the military and the aspects that we grew up in the military, most guys are self-motivated to a certain extent, right? For the groups that we worked with, because to operate at, to keep up at any level, you've got to have some self-motivation. But I think one of the powerful things that you said in that, outside of just the reflective leadership piece, is, and just to tie it back to what we were previously talking about, like, it's that accountability piece, right? Like, you've got all those guys or gals around you that are going to hold you to the standard, if not push you to pass the standard, right? And that's so valuable. And so when we go back and we talk about, dude, who the fuck are you hanging out with? Is your one of five? Are they holding you accountable? Have you shared your goals, and are they going, hey, dude, you go to the gym today? You know, are they helping hold you to that standard that you're trying to set for yourself and have some accountability? I think that's so fundamentally important. And that's why the people you surround yourself with are so important.
100%. And
yeah,
I mean,
that's a good, dude. That's a really good segue into another question that I had was, I think that we kind of get used to having that around us all the time,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're when you're in your
100%.
unit, when we were in the fighter squadron, when you're in the regiment, you know, you can't walk into that place and not have people look at you and go, dude, what the fuck? You know, like you didn't go to the gym today. It's clear, you know, you didn't get a haircut, you know, all this, whatever it is, you know, and you start to associate yourself with that tribe. And then after 24 years or after 21 years, in my case, 20 years in Cass's case, somebody hands you a flag and that shit's over with. And then there's kind of this question of now what? And we were talking about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about these kids not having a why to chase. You know, well, our why for our entire adult life was this thing that we were a part of. It was the reason that we studied. It was the reason that we read and got that haircut and made sure our uniforms were tight and got up early in the morning and went to the gym and ate right. And, you know, all these different elements of it. And then it's over. And so, Mike, I'd really like to get your ideas from the regiment, from the special forces piece of it. And I know that is, that's a hot topic. It has been for many years now, since GWAT and probably in the, you know, the 2010s and beyond, as these people started getting out of the military, man, that transition, holy crap, dude, that's tough to deal with for a lot of people.
Yeah. I read something, and it was actually a comedian. I'm sorry, I didn't read it. I saw a video on it. It's a pretty profound statement. I'm not sure that I totally agree with it, but basically what he said is that you know, they, you know, meaning the government, the VA, all this different kind of stuff, realized that it was cheaper to idolize veterans and to put them up on a pedestal than to actually treat them. Okay, so, you know, that's a really kind of attention-grabbing, egregious thing to say. But I think we can pull the thread on that a little bit. And I think it can actually serve kind of a purpose. And here's what I mean is we all raised a right hand, okay, for the most part, our generation. None of us were drafted, okay? No one's been drafted since Vietnam, okay? Yeah. We all volunteered for this. We made a conscious decision to do it, and in many of our cases, all three of our cases, we continued to volunteer to do it. You know,
for better,
for many,
for
many
worse.
years.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, better or worse, but you know, we volunteered to do it. And my point is that I think why a lot of people struggle when they get out is because of almost this mentality of, well, I did my time, now it's somebody else's time. That's not true in the least bit, okay? And what I mean is think of everything that was done for you while you were in the military. Okay, don't get me wrong, there was plenty of hard times, there's plenty of difficult times, there were things you were asked to do. I mean, I'm not taking away from any of that. But that's a little bit separate of a conversation, and you've got to unpack those demons, and you've got to, you know, see specialists about that. What I'm saying is it comes down to purpose, okay? You're not done. Every leader that you had your entire time invested in you, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but they all invested in you. Unbeknownst to you, there was dozens of people that took care of you, and you just didn't even know it. You didn't even know it. Because when things were going right, somebody was taking care of you. You just didn't freaking know it. The only time that you came aware of it was when something was going wrong, and you're like, they're fucking us. Like, they're not taking care of us. Like, why is there no hot chow today? Like, you know, the DFAC doesn't have freaking, you know, buttermilk pancakes today. What the hell is this Eggo bullshit? You know, like, you know, I mean, those are the times that you're like, they're just screwing us over. But what about the, you know, the thousands of millions of times where things went right and you had what you needed exactly when you needed it or before you needed it? So people were taking care of you. Okay. 2, there's a lot of people that are not around anymore. There's a lot of people that died in combat protecting their brothers and sisters to the left and the right. And then there's also a large majority that lost the battle of their demons when they came home.
Yeah.
Okay. And my point in saying all that is your purpose now. Just because you're done your representation of the military, whatever branch you served in, you still represent that. You still have an obligation to carry that message, to still talk to people about it, tell people about it, because we're always going to need an Air Force. We're always going to need an Army. We're always going to need a Marine Corps. We're always going to need a Navy. I mean, I would love to live in a pacified world, but the truth is we don't. Somebody's going to want what we want, or they're going to want to take away what we have. I mean, that's just the reality of the world. It's existed since the beginning of man. Oh, that tribe has fire. I'm going to go fucking kill them all. Take all their women and take all their fire, and boom. And it's just gotten more complicated and more gruesome, and we've gotten better with our weaponry throughout time. So my overall point is that you served, and you got to continue to serve in whatever capacity. You get to define that now. That's the beautiful thing. When you're in the military, you have a routine, and your service is prescribed. You're a fighter pilot. You fly planes. You drop bombs. Okay, you do bad things to bad people from 10,000 feet to 30,000 feet. That's what you do. If you're an airborne ranger, you jump out of planes and you use every weapon at your disposal to close with and destroy the enemies of your country. Okay, that's what you do. And you better be better at it than anybody else. Okay, so it's prescribed. Now you get to choose it. But how are you doing it? How are you making maybe the military better, or the military support services? But it doesn't have to be just that. How are you making society better? World War II's generation, it was not the greatest generation just because they defeat the Imperial Japanese and then also the Nazi regime. They're also known the greatest generation because what they did, they fixed America when they came back. They started businesses, they propagate, they had children at the largest, rate that we've ever seen. They did all kinds of different things. They created the middle class of America, which is the stability of our country. That's why they're the greatest generation. So when we talk about the GWAT generation, or whatever generation, we're talking about, what are you doing to better? You know what service entails. You lived it. It was you. So continue to do it, and continue to apply those leadership principles, those selfless service principles that you learned in the military. It doesn't stop because you hanged up the uniform. You can prescribe how that's going to be, and that's a beautiful thing. And then the last thing is don't be a fat veteran. No one likes a fat veteran. If you're going to be fat, don't claim that you were ever in the military.
Yeah.
Say, no, I've just always been fat. Piece of shit my whole life. I've never been in the service. Like, don't be a fat veteran. No one likes a fat veteran, and you're a disgrace. Sorry.
A buddy of mine told me one day, he says, when you retire, you get two choices. You can either be Captain America, or you can be Fat Thor. You choose. Yeah. And I said, well, I don't want to be Fat Thor because that was egregious. Yeah. Thor's been my guy, and I was really pissed off when they made him Fat Thor. So point taken.
Yeah.
Appreciate
it. I think, I mean, I see guys like, and they're like my peers, and they get out and they're like, oh man, they talk about getting out and they're like, man, I'm just glad I don't ever have to work out again. And I'm like,
what?
That's a terrible fucking idea, right? Dude. You know how fat you're going to get? And then I see them and I'm like, dude, what the hell, man? Like, take that shirt off, like right now. Okay. Take that shirt off. Okay. Just no.
Yeah, well, going back to your previous,
that was me, and I'm sorry. I still love you.
Man. It's awesome. It's funny.
I just want to love you, not all of you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't love.
I just don't want to look at it.
Much. It's hot on my mind because I just got back from the 50th anniversary for 275. It was a phenomenal event, but there were some of those dudes. I'm like, they'd be like, oh, hey, what are you up to? And I'm like, oh, this, and this. And then I'll be like, well, what are you up to? I mean, obviously you've been eating, but what else have you been up to?
That's awesome.
They're like, you're still a dick. I'm like, well,
up to about 265. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that transition can be tough, but just to piggyback on what you said and maybe to distill it down, we had a guy on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and one thing that he said that really resonated with me was add value, right? And when you were in the 100%. Military, dude, you added value, right? You added value to your unit. You added value to your organization. Like, you added value. So figure out whatever that is for you on the backside of that, because you do have choice now, and find a way to add value.
Well, I think Cass, to piggyback on that, man, it's, that purpose piece of it that Mike was mentioning. And that's kind of what led to us doing this podcast.
Yep.
about a year and a half ago was, we both retired in
You start a
2018.
podcast, you brew beer, you pick up archery, and you pick up jiu-jitsu. Those are the options.
Like that. Something like that.
I don't make the rules.
Maybe not in that order, but no, we were, we retired in 2018, and it took us all the way till 2023 to kind of, run through all those things and run through those emotions and run through all this kind of now what that we were having. And I know it. I went downhill for about 2 or 3 years after I retired, and I gained a lot of weight, and I got really good at Netflix and Cheez-Its. And luckily for me, I had an epiphany that, man, this is not who I am, and I was able to change on that. And then Cass and I I don't know, the universe works in mysterious ways. It put us together in the same place, same time. And we had a discussion about, hey man, let's figure out a way to give back, because you're exactly right, dude. When I was transitioning, when I was retiring, I had an 06 that I reached out to. He was a friend, and he kind of mentored me through the process. He helped me with my resume. He put me in touch with some people. He gave me some resources to check out. And at the end of it, after I got a job, I called him up and I said, dude, I really want to just come over and buy you a bottle and sit on the porch and say thank you. And he goes, no, man, that's not what it's about. It's, I did what I was supposed to do, and now you have the chance. So when it's your turn, just give back.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you brought that up, man. And kind of just putting a bow on it real quick. It's, if you're transitioning out of the military, whether it's from 4 years or 24 years, it doesn't matter. You got to find a new why. You got to find a new purpose. You got to continue doing the same things that you were doing, maybe in a different capacity, but find something that gives you a reason to get up in the morning and study and read and communicate with other people and share those stories and experiences, because you never know when you're going to help somebody out. You just never know. This podcast, man, Cass and I have sat here and said all this same shit till we're blue in the face, but because Mike Burke said it, it might resonate with somebody.
Yep.
Somebody might hear it in a different tone from a different voice and go, oh, wait, I totally get that, and so that's why I think having these continual, these same messages come up over and over and over again, I think is just huge, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just like a therapist. I mean, the amount of therapists I've went through is ridiculous. And the reason is because just didn't connect. They'd fire me or I'd fire them because it just didn't work. But guess what? I just went on to the next one until I finally found one that worked for me. So it's the same kind of thing is because it's not prescribed, you're just you might have to try a lot of stuff, but don't get deterred. Don't lose focus. Find whatever that is and just keep on doing it, because that's the beauty of not being in the military is there's no one to tell you anymore.
Yeah.
And that can be a daunting thing, but it can also be an enlightening thing. But I think you hit it on the nail on the head. Just find a way to add value.
Yeah.
And also just on that is don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
Just keep on going. Reach out to everybody that you could possibly reach out to. Just like when you got a wingman in the Air Force, okay? Or if you're clearing a house, you ask for one. Well, the same thing goes in civilian life. Just reach out, ask. It's okay. We're here to help each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the metaphor we like to use, Mike, is just get back in the arena, man.
Yep.
100%. Just you got to if you want to create opportunity in life, if you want to move in different directions, you're going to have to get in the arena, man. You're going to have to get dirty. And I know we've all done that already in our first careers, but you might have to do that a little bit again in whatever you transition into, right? And you're going to get beat up a little bit, and you're going to get bloodied, but so what? It's nothing we haven't fucking done before anyways, right? So learn, pivot when you need to, shift directions, take the lessons, and press. Just keep pushing forward, man. And reach out to the guys around you, because I guarantee you they're there for you. We're all there for each other, right? There are guys that, I know I can pick up the phone. I think when it gets to when guys start to isolate, or not to go down a dark rabbit hole here, but just when guys start to isolate, or there's so much shame involved around whatever it is that they're dealing with, that they don't want us to see them as something different than what they think we saw them as, is when things get bad. And if there's guys out there that are listening to this, all I want to tell you is you'll never be anything but the dude that I always fucking looked up to in the squadron. I don't care what you're dealing with. I don't care what you're going through. Like, dude, you're my fucking brother. I learned from you. You were there for me. You taught me. You know, you were an example to people in the squadron. And if you need help, let it be our turn.
Yep. The fact that you wore the uniform makes you my brother and makes you my sister. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah,
Trust me.
same.
I'm not going to judge you one bit. Reach out to me. Even if you were a lowly Marine, reach out to me, and I'm there for you, 100%.
Marines are people too.
Yeah.
Despite what we might have been taught, Marines are people too. They might get. My father-in-law is 70 years old, and he still gets crayons for Christmas. But he's a person.
You got time for one more question, Mike?
Please.
I just have a quick question. Something came up to me because you know you were talking about 30 minutes ago. You were talking about you're just a dumb kid from Montana, and my guess is some of that is just self-efficating because you're a humble dude, right? Obviously, you're not a dumb cat. You're well spoken. You're obviously smart for the things that you're doing now. Now that you've been out, you achieve great heights in the military. But you know, you did mention that when you first got in, there was like that 3.5 years, you're like, dude, you got the calendar on, you're checking off the days, I'm out of here, right? So I'm just curious because we talk a lot about, especially for the younger folks, and it may not even be the younger, maybe, you know, you can have older guys that have lived with messaging that haunts them from their childhood, you know, or even from their young adult life. So I'm just curious if you'd be willing to share, or if there even was any messaging that you had to overcome, you know, as you were starting to grow up in the Army, from, you know, maybe not being the popular kid or wasn't very good at sport, whatever it was, right? Like maybe you were told or had things happen in life that made you feel like you weren't going to ever be good enough. Like, what was there messaging that you had to overcome? And then how did you overcome that messaging?
Yeah. So one, you know, to answer the first part, you know, growing up, I had a very, very troubled childhood. You know, from the day that I was born, quite frankly, you know, it was just my mom and I, and she was very young when she had me. You know, so I grew up without a father until I was almost 6. You know, and then my stepfather, you know, and you know, quickly, you know, things, you know, got very, very complicated in our family dynamic, because of my sister and brother. You know, my sister had a bunch of health issues. So I was kind of left a lot to my own devices, but I really, really struggled with inadequacy and abandonment. You know, because, you know, you always have to kind of look at things of how kids process. And I process that my biological father didn't want me. So therefore, I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. If my own father doesn't want me, then I'm obviously not good enough for this world. You know, and there was a lot of other things that happened to me as a child, into my early, you know, teenage years, and I wasn't popular. I had a hard time connecting with people. I couldn't find my tribe. I wasn't, you know, very athletic. I wasn't super smart. I wasn't artistically gifted, you know. I really just didn't kind of have anything that I really kind of fell into, you know. There was nothing. I mean, sure, I wanted to do it, but I just, for whatever reason, I just couldn't. And really, honestly, what it was the one thing I did have, and I got from my parents, is I had a phenomenal work ethic. I knew, and, you know, also it was because of my family, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. So it was also kind of a requirement to help with, you know, family obligations and everything else. So that's actually kind of the first tribe that I really had was just working, you know, and I had, you know, some odd jobs, and then I ended up working for a grocery store for most of my childhood. But, you know, I had kind of you know, I had a lot of confidence issues. I had a lot of, you know, just inner demons that I was battling, you know, when I joined the Army. And I joined the Army because, you know, I kind of had one of those, you know, aha moments. Yeah, I remember it, you know, and I've talked about it, is I was at a kegger when I was 17. And all these kids are partying and everything else. And this group shows up in these vehicles. And it's all these kids that graduated like 2-3 years ago. You know, they're, you know, 20, you know, I think the oldest one was like 23 years old. And they basically like crashed our high school kegger, you know?
It's like Dazed and Confused,
and I just,
right?
right. Yeah, exactly. And I just remember, and they're like trying to hit on the girls, you know, the girls that are in our class. And I just remember like looking at these guys, and it was kind of like this aha moment. I'm like, dude, what a bunch of losers. Like, you're an adult, and this is what you're choosing to do on your Friday or Saturday night, you know, whatever night it was. I was like, that's fucking lame. Like, and I just remember kind of going, that's me if I don't change the paradigm. If I don't make a conscious decision to do something different, then that's exactly who I'm going to be. And the military, because I didn't have great grades, I didn't have money, so college was not an option at all. And I knew I kind of didn't have the maturity because I didn't really like school, you know. I was like, okay, the military is the option. It's the quickest route out of here, you know. So I did the delayed entry program, and that's where I had my real first successes in life. You know, I made it through basic training. Basic training wasn't that hard. I made it through AIT. AIT wasn't that hard. Airborne school wasn't hard. You have to overcome a lot of fears, you know, in airborne school and stuff. But, you know, again, it wasn't really that hard. And I do remember, you know, so Ranger Indoctrination Program, which is the selection process to get into Ranger Regiment. After the second week, you know, so the first week, you know, it's pretty hard, you know, it's pretty difficult, but the second week's where you got to pass events. You got to, and there's like significant weeding out that happens, you know, and I don't remember exactly my class size. I just remember in the end, there was less than 20 of us. I don't remember what we started at. I want to say it was like 140 or whatever it was. You know, I might have that wrong, but there was 20 of us at the end. And I remember, you know, so we basically got like the weekend off. And then the third week was, you know, you had to do some other kind of critical events, but they weren't really that you passed the hard part. Like and they told you, you know, you passed the hard part. Now you just have to not mess up, and you just kind of have to do these last things on the third week. And I remember calling my parents, and it was like the first time, like, one, I'd ever really gotten emotional, but two, I remember the phone call because I remember like, I've actually done something here. Like, I've actually accomplished something that's extremely hard. I've set myself out from all these other individuals. I'm not the last man standing, but I'm one of the last guys standing out of this huge group of individuals. And I remember just being like, wow, you know, I'd created a new normal, like I talked about. But then when I arrived to Ranger Regiment, I was reminded of how inadequate I was. You know, I didn't have great leaders. It just reminded me that I'm an idiot, you know, and that's what they were telling me. I didn't know anything. I wasn't going to make it, you know, and all this different kind of stuff. And I was just like, and now, you know, this comes into one of the things I was talking about. Upon reflection, I realized some things that I also became my own worst enemy. The reason I hated the Army is because I wasn't doing what I've talked about here. Was I didn't take charge as a leader. You know, I was fortunate enough to go to Ranger School very young, after like 7 months in Ranger Regiment, which was very uncommon back then, and passed, and then came back and immediately was put into a leadership position. But I was so jaded because of the previous time that I really honestly didn't do the right thing as a leader. I was jaded. I was angry. It was not what I thought it was going to be. But what I didn't realize, and I've now, you know, and this comes into the reflection upon things years later, is the principle I didn't remember was I was in the best position to solve my problems. If I didn't like the environment, then I should have changed it. I was a young leader.
Yeah.
I was a young leader. Sure, I was a corporal. Okay, but I was a leader at the end of the day. I could have changed that paradigm because I was put in a leadership position and I knew more than the guys in my team. So therefore I could have been different. And then, you know, and then I went over and I was in the line squad, but it really, for whatever reason, you know, I didn't know that stuff, you know, back then. And it took a very strong-willed leader to kick me in the face and say, listen, you're an airborne fucking Ranger, okay? You're a rifle team leader. This is the job that every private wants in Ranger Regiment. Stop your bitching. Stop complaining, okay? Stop whining and do your goddamn job and do it better than anybody else. And, you know, I'm not going to say like it was just like all of a sudden thing, but over time, him just beating that in my head. But more importantly, him not just telling me things, him demonstrating those things, him doing those things. He was leading us. He was going through and doing the exact same things that he was asking us to do, that I was like, oh, that's leadership. Oh, wow. Okay, this is what a team is. And that team that was formed around this gentleman, like we became extremely close. And I have a picture actually, and I've shared it on social media. There was 5 of us, okay? And in this team, and this is right before September 11th. This is actually when we were in Germany training, okay? When we were in Germany when it happened. And so you got Josh, who became a master sergeant, awarded the Silver Star, was in Delta Force, okay? Next to him is a guy named Mike Otto. Mike Otto became a CW3 warrant officer pilot in the 160th, okay, for helicopters. Next to him is a guy named Joshua Colburn, who became a sergeant major as well in Delta Force, okay? And then there was a 5th guy, okay? Every group's got a guy. He, ended up, getting in a shootout with the cops and died. So, that happens. And then you have me. That became a sergeant major and a brigade sergeant major. So my point is that like this one dude took this vagabond of misfits, and then like all of a sudden it became this just amazing group of individuals that went on to, multiple leadership positions or special mission units within the Army. And I've reflected on that many, many times, and all I've really ever tried to do throughout my entire career is replicate that leadership style, 1, and 2, that replication of talent. Like find find individuals, meet them where they're at, show them the right way, and just cultivate wherever they're at, and just continue to push them and continue to strive to get better and everything else. So I went from, you take this 17, 18-year-old broken kid that even though he'd accomplished something, still was struggling with the demons and the insecurities of his past, to now I'm sitting here on a podcast with 2 amazing gentlemen that were freaking fighter pilots, for God's sakes, okay? And I'm talking about leadership. I'm talking about mentorship. Like, that didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And I've had my ups and my downs, and I still struggle some days with, like, am I adequate enough to be doing the things that I'm doing? I'm a father of 4. Like, what the hell do I know about being a father? Well, I'm actually pretty good at it. One's in the Air Force, one's crushing it in school, and I mean, all this different kind of stuff. So anyway, I kind of went down a rabbit hole there.
No, that's good, man. I mean, I think some of the takeaways from your story there are, we've all got messaging, I think, that we've gotten that probably doesn't set us up for success, but it doesn't have to define our course, right? It doesn't have to define who we become and what we're about, right? And some of the things that helped you with your confidence and kind of regain some of that confidence was the small victories that you achieved along the way, and 100%. Then you got to Ranger Battalion, but see, this is good because you may get to a place where you're having small victories and then you get a setback, man. But if you just realize that setback, maybe it's bad leadership, maybe it's, you don't quite attain the goal that you set out for, and now you've got to kind of go back to task and figure out, okay, so what are the intermediate steps that I need to do to get to that next evolution of it? And a big part of it's mentorship, right? And the people that you ended up finding yourself surrounded by that helped to build some of those skills for you. And that's what we're trying to do on this podcast, is help guys build skills to do that, right? To just continue to progress and advance and kind of have some self-inspection and think through, what are the things that I really need to look at about me that need to be changed, that I can fix, that I can control, so that I can show up tomorrow just a little bit better than I was yesterday, right? So that's powerful, dude. And thanks for sharing. I mean, that's a personal question, and I appreciate you being honest and actually, giving us a really good fucking answer around it.
Well, I appreciate you asking the question and allowing me to tell the story.
That's good shit, man. Cass, what other questions you got, dude?
That's it, man. I don't know what we're at, but it's been a while. It's been a bit. So
137. So
right on.
Yeah, good shit.
Yeah.
I got two short questions, really short, kind of rapid fire questions. First, are you a Dapper Dan or a FOP guy?
Dapper Dan, definitely.
Dapper Dan? Okay.
Right.
I don't want fop, goddammit. I'm a Dapper Dan man. Cass, you know what we're talking about?
I have
Come
no
on, man.
fucking clue what you're talking about.
Pomade, man. Look at his hair.
Oh, okay. Whatever.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We're
You're
geographical
2 weeks from
anomaly.
everywhere.
We're 2 weeks everywhere.
Cass doesn't appreciate good comedy, I guess.
I do.
And then the last one, man, is what are you reading right now?
So I am actually reading a book called The Devil Within, or The Devil of Unrest, and it's about the Civil War and the days leading up to the decision of Abraham Lincoln to enter the Civil War and kind of the divide of the secession of the states and everything else. And it was actually on Jill Brierly, who hosts From the Green Notebook podcast and blog. So it was one of his recommendations. It's a decent book.
Right on.
Yeah, it's a pretty good book, and it's very interesting to kind of see the different dynamics that kind of played into the secession of all the southern states.
Yeah, for sure. I've got probably 4 different Abraham Lincoln books and Civil War books sitting on my shelf that are kind of in my long-term on deck circle that I just, because when I go into it, I want to go into all of them, right? And I just kind of immerse myself in that world. But I did finish up a few weeks ago, I finished up a historical fiction book by John Jake, who's kind of the godfather of historical fiction. And he writes a lot around the Civil War. And this one was about the Secret Service in the Civil War. And he told a lot of the history of it through a couple of fictional characters. And it was really, really interesting. I didn't realize that it went back that far. But it was illuminating. And, you know, as I'm going through the book, it's really hard to separate fact and fiction in a lot of areas. So I had to utilize Google to kind of sort some of it out, but really fascinating stuff that was happening around those times.
Awesome.
Well, cool, Mike, thanks for your service, brother, and thanks for taking the time out and amongst your what sounds like a really busy fucking schedule to come on the podcast and to talk with us, man. We really appreciate you.
Mike, thanks for coming on, dude. Tell us where we can find you, where people can look you up and follow you.
Yeah, so one of the major projects that we're working on is, everybody can find me on, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Mike S. Burke, but then also pages on all 3, again, are Legends of the 75th, and you can find us on there. And Legend of the 75th, just like you gentlemen, we're doing a podcast as well. We talk about leadership, but it's honestly just really about the culture of the organization, the 75th Ranger Regiment. And we have members that were there in that regiment, and served in that regiment, and they talk about their time and they talk about their journey, much like what you guys are doing. But currently we also are going in another direction. We're going to continue to do the podcast, but we're actually going to make a couple movies. So we are doing some fundraising. So if there's anybody out there that wants to support the cause, I'll send over the link as well, because we're trying to do a major fundraising for Operation Kabanaton, which was a raid that happened in World War II to rescue 500 POWs, some of them from the Bataan Death March. We're taking a bunch of Rangers over there with a film crew, narrator, director, producer, and everything else. We're going to pay homage to, the mission itself, the raid that actually happened, but then also we are going to, do a historical account of it, but then also we're going to draw parallels, because we're going to have Rangers that served in Panama, Grenada, Mogadishu, and then also the GWAT, and we're going to draw parallels like, hey, during the mission they were looking at this is something similar that we went to, and on the back side of that we're actually going to produce some kind of film. What it's going to look like, what it's exactly going to be is undecided yet, but this is a new direction we're going to be going, and we're going to try to basically travel the world and capture significant historical battles and conflicts that the 75th Ranger Regiment's participated in over the last 80 years.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Good shit, man. You guys go look up Mike S. Burke, follow him, give him a like and a follow, and we'll be definitely staying tuned to seeing what else is coming out of your world, man, out of your universe.
I appreciate you. I really appreciate you. And I'm glad Mike Jerrigan linked us up.
Yeah.
And I love fellow military podcasters. So it's an absolute honor, gentlemen. And you guys are doing amazing work.
Thanks, brother.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks for coming. Cass, be the one.
Be the change.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1changeone.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be1Change1 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website, and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.